This is such a very good question. How do we really deal with not knowing who we are after cults, especially if you were a cult baby, someone who grew up in a cult? You did not get a chance to develop your personality, and that's something you will have to do on the outside if you want to recover. I'm Daniella, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. I wrote a book called Uncultured that you can get at my other accounts or attached here if you're watching this not on TikTok or on Spotify Premium. It's about growing up in the Children of God religious cult and then going into the cult of the US Army. And one of the realizations I had to have, this was deep into my decade of deconstruction. This was after I had already written out my book, right? Like sorted my life in this certain amount of way. And I was doing heavy amounts of cult research for the next book, Culting of America, which comes out January 20th. And I had this realization in actual words. Oh, I didn't get to form a personal identity. And Margaret Singer, not Margaret Sanger, Margaret Singer of Cults writes in her books, Cults in Our Midst, that cults and totalitarian organizations are the antithesis of structures in which a full person can develop. Right? So if you grew up in a high control environment, if you grew up in any version of in the world but not of the world, if you grew up being held back from the culture that you should have been participating in, you don't have a personality. And you're probably masking super hard, trying to be this person or be that person or be that person. It leads us to follow on trauma. It leads us to cult hopping. It leads us to so many different things, right? So many manifestations of trauma. And I think this is true for many things in deconstruction, that once you can name it, once I was like, oh, I didn't get to form a personal identity. I was like, cool. All I need to do is go out and do that. This was about 5 years ago, folks. And my look is on point. Pretty sure I know who I am. It changes all the time. This is called delayed adolescence. And in the musical that I'm writing, this is going to be my line in the last song, Living With It. Because we were delayed adolescents, now we got to have our delayed adolescence, right? We notice I don't dress like a typical 38-year-old woman because I didn't get to be 15 and wear whatever I wanted and do silly things and get pushback from society and establish who I am. If your friends and family are telling you that you're being very narcissistic in your decade of deconstruction and in your healing, good. You didn't get to do it as a toddler. You didn't get to do it as a teenager. That's what you're supposed to be doing. That is what your job is during those years. That's why nobody but toddlers and teenagers like toddlers and teenagers, right? Because it is an important developmental part of understanding that you are a special, whole, separate, important person with an identity and with a personality. And we do that work in our toddlers and in our teens. You never slammed a door and tell your parents you hated them. You might need to do some more internal discovery on who you actually are without all of this pressure. For women, by the way, we all have to do that anyway, because as John Stuart Mill wrote in the 1800s, of women's nature, the last word will never be written. We don't know who we really are because we've been so controlled and told who we are. And oh, by the way, if you haven't deconstructed whiteness yet and you are a white people, same, right? I really think, especially for women, good women in America are supposed to be quiet, skinny, and a light shade of beige. That's from the chapter on Skinny White Woman. And we need to deconstruct all of that to figure out who we actually are underneath. But you're there. You're there somewhere. The parts of you that tried to form are all there. And this is hard work, but it's fun work, and it's very good work. You can wear wacky outfits as part of healing. I actually think it's a very important part of healing, is wearing wacky outfits in public, whatever that means to you and however it's safe for you. But to teach yourself subconsciously that you are the captain of your own life. You get to decide what you want to wear and how you want to present yourself in public and to the world every single day of your life. And it will help you sort of undo some of this toxic, controlling stuff. Oh, and by the way, growing up under authoritarian control and parenting is something that makes people really prone to accept fascism. So deconstructing all of this right now, really, really, really important work that you're doing.